Oh, what it do, guys, and welcome back to another video. Now in today's video we're going to be diving in towards an Ash build, and for this one in particular we are going to be using this augment here on screen. So this is going to be more for a stealth run and gun build. You're going to have plenty of survivability because stealth is one of the best forms of survival, and you're also going to be able to benefit from the critical sides to go and help your running and gunning and do some really powerful weapon combinations to go and get the most out of it. Now I will be using another augment as well, but this one is not a necessity. It just happens to synergize really nicely with this build, so you can go and slot it in if you want to, but again, not a necessity. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump straight in towards Ash and his builds. So as always, what I want to go and do is have a little look on the left hand side and go ahead and prioritize my ability setup. So in terms of this stat priority, number one, duration. Duration is going to be the main key component go to. Not only is it going to go and help the fact of my second ability, not only am I using it kind of defensively for the survival and stealth, it's not recastable, but I'm also going to be technically benefiting offensiveness from that because of the smoke shadow augment. In this case here, whenever I go invisible, I get 150% multiplicative to base critical damage, which critical chance, which is going to be really nice here. So it's going to go ahead, it's kind of the same if you're using things like point strike and all of it's those kind of critical chance mods. It's like that, it'll just add towards them, so it gives you a little bit more critical chance, which if it can enter new critical tiers, it's going to be good if it can go and do that, but we're going to add something else to try and make it do that as well. So that's what's going to be going on there. Because of that, so offensively and defensively, because the scales of duration and it cannot be recast, duration is our main key component. Now we will be using subsumables, and since it's a run and gun build as well, any of the subsumables, I'm going to go and just put like a quick list of them up on the screen here. Any of these subsumables that you want to go ahead and use, Rhino's Roar, Grendel's Nourish, Mirage's Eclipse, or even Zaku's Sada's Whisper, they all pair really well with running and gunning. They will all amplify your weaponry, giving them different bonuses, buffs, some of them multiplicators, some of them additive, whatever it may be, new damage instances, whatever. All of these are going to be good. For my one, I've just gone with the Rhino Roar because at the end of the day, it's faction, and faction can be multiplicative. And if I do want to go for dot-related builds, then this also applies the double dipping factor, where it also applies again to the damage over time setup. So Roar is just going to be a really good one. It doesn't mean you have to go Roar. It's just what I'm going for. And as always, Roar is not recastable. So once again, duration is going to need to be nice and high. So you can see why we've gone duration for the build and the main component from it. From there onwards though, what I do want to go and do is make sure I have things like strength, but strength is mostly going to be catering to the subsumable choice that you go ahead and pick. So in this case, it's going to be the Rhino's Roar. So that's why I've got the things like Blind Rage and the Precision Intensify. So you won't be needing his fourth, so we will be dropping that. The Blade Storm's not needed for this for our run and gun builds. We can actually benefit from all of his other abilities and his passive, so we'll be keeping those. But yes, then we just want to go and just whack strength on there, and Precision Intensify is 90% ability strength to the fourth ability, and like I said, we're not using Blade Storm, so that's the reason why we put this on the fourth ability. Your subsumable choice, put it over the fourth one and whack it in there as well. Now Smoke Shadow itself does not scale off ability strength, so please go and keep that in mind. You're not going to be getting any more increased critical chances of that, so mostly it's going to be just overall damage from the ability strength towards this. All right, now from there onwards we do have these other two, so it's going to be efficiency. Now efficiency is always situational. It really depends on how you want to go ahead and set up your efficiency within your builds. Some people are going to need more, some people are going to need less. It really depends on your companions, it depends on the mods that you're using, streamlines, fleetings, equilibriums, and it also depends on your focus score. Some people might be using Xenuric focus score, nothing wrong with that. So balance your efficiency the way that you're happy with it. So make sure that you can cast your abilities, make sure that you can run and gun, and make sure that you've stored a good amount of energy so that it isn't problematic. For my one here, sometimes I wouldn't mind either a bit more efficiency or a bit more conversion, but for the most part, I'm just going to be running streamline. But I do have a miniature equilibrium in my Archon Shards. All right, so just keep that in mind. And then finally, we got range. Now, range for this build technically isn't needed, but I will go and say one thing. The teleport over here does go ahead and scale off range, but it's so massive. It's 60 meters base that I can hit range as much as I want to, and it goes down to 20.4. That's still an awful lot that I can go and get off that. But what we do like about range here, per se, is that I can go and use Teleport Rush. Now, Teleport Rush, like I said, synergizes with the idea of running and gunning. It basically just states that using teleport increases parkour velocity by 30% for 12 seconds, and then whenever I go and execute a target with teleport, it extends smoke screen's duration by 5%. Now that does go ahead and scale, and if you do a teleport mercy kill, it will fully refresh the duration. Now, the mercy kills, you're not typically going to be doing an awful lot with this build. However, yes, you can look towards the Coda Bass Assist. If you understand what I mean by that, consider it. If you don't understand, don't worry about it. I'm not going to go into it too much. So don't worry about the very last part here, teleport mercy kills, just ignore that for now. But teleport extends smoke screen's duration by 5 seconds as well. We can also go and see that the duration finisher kill here is and has been bumped up. So we can go and bump that up, which is also going to be generally quite nice. So this means I don't have to refresh my, this will be a way to help me extend / kind of refresh smoke screen, since it's not a recastable ability. But I also get parkour velocity. Running and gunning is all about moving very quickly through tile sets, and since I'm going to be invisible, I'm just going to be a cloud of smoke running the blitzing over people, true ninja like, and just nuking everything around me before they can even react. I'm in one room, I'm right out the other. All right, that's going to be my goal. I want it to be as effortless as possible, as automated as possible. And that's exactly what we're going for. So that's what I'm doing in terms of like overall priority and overall order. As for the other mods that I've got in here, prime continuity, more ability duration, narrow-minded, lots of ability duration. And like I said, we don't really need the ability range. It's only teleport that will be typically the only one that's hurt by it, so that's fine. I'm not really given things like allies, my smoke shadow, nor am I really prioritized on my raw. So I don't really typically, this isn't like me being generous to allies, this is me getting more for what I want. So you're going to be quite selfish with this build. If you want to go and give more to your allies, you can do, but that's not what I'm doing. All right. Now, the strength mods over here as well, already kind of covered these. Blind Rage is the biggest ability strength mod in the game, 99%, but it does go and hurt your efficiency, so do go and keep that in mind. Equilibrium, Streamline, so forth, you are going to need to go and combat this. And then as for my overall stored energy, like I said, I got Streamline, held the ability efficiency, so these don't cost as much. They're still going to cost a pretty penny, but not as much. And then we got the Prime Flow as well, where I can go and store more and more energy into it. Augments were already covered as well, covered all of this. So up here, what we want to go and do is kind of cover these two. So let's go and start with the prime sure-footed. I will go and say this is not entirely needed, but although you're invisible, you're not invulnerable and you're not invincible. You're just invisible, okay? So things like prime sure-footed is still kind of nice. Barriers, lasers, enemies still just trying to go ahead and do any form of knockdown, even acolytes that are coming in. Any kind of way that I can use knockdown to my advantage, I will consider it. This is not a must-have though. Again, you're typically invisible, so most things aren't really going to be able to know where you are, especially if you run silencing on your weapons, then they're definitely not going to know where you are. So not a must-have. If you do want to go and put anything else in here, consider things like Power Drift. It's probably the one that I would go for. Excuse me, because it synergizes very well with the build, gives you ability strength, and it also gives you a chance to resist knockdown. It's a 30% chance, whereas this is a 100% chance. So it's a much lower version of this, but also giving you ability strength, which means you can go and get even more out of your Subsumable option. Now, as for the, unless you want to do parkour mods or something else like that in there. Now, as for the aura mod, what you will go notice is I have an unranked aura mod in here. This basically states, it's called Combat Discipline. I lose 1 health on kill. Squad mates gain 5 health on kill. And again, I'm not really here for the squad mates, but I lose 1 health on kill. Now, why is that important? And why do I also have it ranked at the lowest? So let me go and show you. When it's highest, I lose 10 health on kill. Now, here's the thing. We want to lose health because of our Arcane choice. Now, I'm going to be using this one here called Arcane Avenger. Arcane Avenger basically states that whenever I'm damaged, there's a 21% chance for 45% additional critical chance, final additional critical chance. I'll get to that formula in a second in terms of additive critical chance, because this is relative. This is absolute, this is relative. Multiplicative, additive. We'll get to that in a moment. But again, it says on damage 21% chance. So if I use this, it would be 10 health. So if I kill 10 enemies, I've already lost 100 health. Now I only have 555 health in this build. I will tell you gladly right now, even with an equilibrium setup, I ended up dying when I started running this completely maxed out. So I would need things like Vazarin, or I'd need like Molt Reconstruct. I would need an Arcane, maybe like, was it Elevate or whatever it's called? I would need an Operating Arcane to give myself health back. Whereas if I just go and use an unranked version of it, unfortunately, it means my overall capacity is a bit lower. See how that puts me to 74, which means I get way more room. Well, this one is way less taxes, so I only get 64 total capacity, which means, yes, your build is going to need quite a few more formers in here to benefit from that. So it's your call. You don't have to run this by all means. It just allows me to go for this. So let me go and explain about what I mean by additive versus relative. So I'm going to go and use my notepad here, if you don't mind me using my notepad. I want to go and give you an example here with a low critical chance versus a high base critical chance. So a low base critical chance could be something like 9%. Now, if I take 9% and I add 45% towards the 9%, we're going to end up getting 54%, right? Which, again, quite easy. You can go and see like a good return on this. When it's additive to base, because this is additive to base critical chance, any critical weapon that's low critical chance means that we're going to go ahead and get a good amount from it. But in terms of formula, this is final critical chance. What that basically means is it would be like it's base critical chance multiplied by 1+, and then it's critical mods, then it's plus, and then in this case it would be Arcane Avenger, so it's final critical chance. So my point is that if you use any critical mods, they are scaling off your base critical chance. Why is this important? Let's go and have a little look as a hypothetical here. If I took something like a weapon called Bobonico, this basically means if I have 9% critical chance and I use a Smoke Shadow, which gives me 150% critical chance, and I used a critical mod, I think it's called like Creeping Bullseye, it gives you 200% critical chance. Now look at that, that's 350% critical chance. That's a lot of critical chance, but 350% of 9% is only 40.5. Ready to see the difference here? Well, if I went ahead and took that 0.09%, right? Whoops, sorry. And I added it to the 0.45, as we can go ahead and see earlier what I was talking about, you'll go ahead and get the 54% over here, as you can easily go ahead and see. So 54%, that alone, the Arcane Avenger just alone is better than me using 350%. See, when something's lower, you add to it to bring it up. When something's higher by base, you multiply to it to go even further. So if I took the Bobonico, and as you can see here, if I end up putting the Arcane Avenger in it, now I get 85.5. So that does help it a bit more, but it doesn't enter a new critical tier. Now, if you don't know much about critical tiers, I do have a huge modding video on it. Maybe I put the thumbnail or something on the screen here, but you can learn way more from, if you want to understand how to get more out of your builds, feel free to go watch that video. But anyways, let's go and take the Kuva Bramma, and I'll stop rambling right now, forgive me. This has got 35% base critical chance. Now, if I had the Smoke Shadow and the Point Strike mods, that gives me 140%. If I go and use the Arcane Avenger, that gives me 185%. So it doesn't quite take me into a new critical tier, but it definitely gets me closer to a new critical tier, and that's the reason why I want absolute additive, and also why I want multiplicative relative. I actually get the best of both worlds by essentially using these together, and it doesn't really typically hurt me nor my build, which is why it's really, really good to go ahead and go for a critical chance route by going for absolutes and going for relatives as well. So that's multiplicatives and additives. But if I took the Kuva Bramma and if I was going to add 45 towards that as opposed towards all of these, that would only give me, what's that, 80%. So as you can see, now the 80% is less than the multiplicative, right? So if I took the 0.435 and I plus that with 0.45, that would go ahead and give me a 80% return. So you can see when the base critical is higher, the Arcane Avenger is not as good. The mods would be better. But when the critical chance is lower, the Arcane, the Arcane itself is actually better than the mods. hopefully that gives you an idea as to what I'm talking about with the formula, okay? So this is why we've ended up going for both of these, because it can go and help certain builds. My advice is, though, if you are taking a low critical chance weapon with this setup, it is not worth it. So I'll say that one more time. If you're taking a low critical chance weapon, if it's got 4% critical chance, if it's got 8% critical chance, hell, even if it's got like maybe even just 10% critical chance, you're not going to get an awful lot out of Smoke Shadow and lots of relative critical mods, okay? So yes, Arcane Avenger can try and help you, but ideally try and go for like 15%, 20%, 25%, 30%, 35%, you know, start going for bigger numbers, then start working with that, all right? 20%, anything around 20% is normally ideal to go and get bigger returns from this setup. Now, as for the other Arcane, I'm hitting final critical chance. This Arcane is Arcane Crepuscular. This is actually hitting final critical damage. This actually gives me a 300% increase to final critical damage, or a 3 times final critical multiplier. So basically it's 3 bonus damage on critical weaponry setups. As you could imagine, this is a very heavy critical weapon setup that's going to enhance a critical weapon that I will be using in synergy with this. Does that make sense? All of that should hopefully be coming together. Now, Arcane Crepuscular as well also states that whilst you're invisible, you also gain 30% ability strength as well towards your build. So ideally, my rotation would be, I would go invisible first with Smokescreen, and then I would go and cast Rhino's Roar. All right, that's basically what you're going to be doing with the build, and that's kind of how all of the build comes together. It's an enhancement to running and gunning, stealth, critical. Okay, remember those three things there: running and gunning, critical, stealth. All right, that's basically when you would be using this build. So in terms of weaponry, I'm going to go and give you my 2 favorite weapons in 2 slots. I'm going to give you my favorite primary that I've been running with this, and I'm going to give you my favorite secondary. Now, the secondary is way stronger than the primary, but let's go ahead and go with it. So as for my primary, I'm running the Kuva Bramma, right? Now, the only downside towards the Kuva Bramma is it has got very, very low magazine, total magazine, basically, ammo maximum is what I'm trying to go say. It only has 5. That's it. This setup, if you're competing for kills with other players and whatnot, geez, it's not great and it doesn't feel great, all right? It just doesn't. So ideally, this would benefit you more if you're a solo runner running into big crowds and big packs of enemies. Steel Path more specifically, all right? So exterminate missions, survival missions, so forth. Try and shoot like a good 3 or more enemies in one shot to hopefully make up for the fact that they convert secondary ammo pickups to 92% of ammo pickup. This is basically going to go ahead and convert ammo and go ahead and give you ammo from ammo that you wouldn't normally go ahead and convert ammo from, if that makes sense. So in this case, secondary is what's going to be converted over towards your Kuva Bramma here, all right? So besides from that, the rest of the build is pretty much simplistic, and it can go as follows. Spectral Serration synergizes really well. Basically, if you are invisible, you gain 330% damage. You can see how that synergizes with this build right now. Now, primary weapons can get this mod. Secondary weapons cannot get this mod. So it works really, really well. In terms of primary, this Ash build incorporates and synergizes very well with primary weapon setups. From there onwards, as for the rest of the builds, I'm just going to go and take a Scalar Multi-Shot, a critical chance. Now, there is a bigger critical chance mod, but keep in mind, it's called Critical Delay. Keep in mind, it gives you minus fire rate, but it's 2 times worse for bows. So it's actually minus 40% fire rate. Do not use this mod on bows. For the love of God, do not use it on bows, all right? So we go and use Point Strike. Unfortunately, I take the 150% critical chance rather than the 200% critical chance. Critical damage, because it's a critical build. And then what I've used on mine over here is I've used Cold and Heat to create blasts. And then I've also used Toxin, so that when Toxin does go ahead and proc on Toxin status effect, critical damage and multi-shot, which stacks up to 40 times, right? I'm going to get a good amount of critical damage, which was the build, critical, and multi-shot on bows, on explosives, also fantastic, all right? Now, you can go ahead and also consider, since it is a bit of a radial setup, as you can go see here, 8.3 as well. I don't quite have it on mine, but you can go and put Prime Firestorm on yours if you want to. The only other thing to go ahead and consider running inside here is going to be Vile Acceleration, 90% fire rate, doubled for bows, 180% fire rate, which is really good for that draw time. Whenever you go ahead and draw the bow, you got to charge it up and then let it go. Well, the idea is I want this as low as possible. If I could just click it and tap it and shoot, perfect. Unfortunately, that's not the case here, but yes, this is one build. I will also go ahead and quickly throw that yes, you can go ahead and scale the build if you want to go and consider things like hunt and munitions. Consider a build like this as well, which is a little bit more dip-in heavy. You don't have to run the faction mod because I'm running Rhino's Raw, but if you're running things like Sarda's Whisper or Eclipse or so forth, then also going to run this because this is going to be a dot related build. I'm just going to leave that on screen now as well. This is going to be viral, heat, and slash. This scales better than what this would scale. This is better for more face value punching, okay? So that's my primary setup. And like I said, this Ash would cooperate better for primaries. The reason why I say that is because I'm going to go and show you my Ocucor. Now, before I even go into anything, the one thing that I know people are going to go and say is, sure, you've got Arcane Avenger, sure, you've got Smoke Shadow, but at the end of the day, secondary weapons have this Arcane right here called Secondary Enervate. So yes, I hear you, I'm aware of it, but please, when you see what my Ocucor is still doing with the Ash, you will go ahead and go, all right, fair enough, all right? But can you use this? Yes. Would this technically nullify the argument for using Ash? Yes. Okay, so I'm agreeing with you, yes. But for now, can we just not? Okay, thank you. I have to hit you with the, can we not, all right? Can we just not? This Ocucor setup is just a generic Ocucor setup. Let me go ahead and go over it really quickly. When it comes towards Ocucor, yes, you need this. It's a must-have. It's called Sentient Surge. It basically means whenever I go and kill an enemy, I refund 20% of the Ocucor's magazine, but then I go and create extra tendrils whenever I go ahead and kill enemies and so forth. I can generate up to 4 extra tendrils. However, whenever I'm generating extra tendrils, I also go and get increased status chance and critical chance, 60% for each active tendril, which is going to be 4 extra tendrils that I'm also going to create in on top of the beam that I'm also just doing. Basically, lots of critical, lots of status. Now, when it comes towards the rest of all of this, multi-shot, scaling, multi-shot and fire rate, lovely stuff, can't go wrong. Critical chance, critical damage, and again, like I said, you could go for the Enervate setup, but critical chance here is also going to be nice because I'm still trying to go ahead and get more out of my Avenger, out of my Smoke Shadow. So if it can get me into new critical tiers, it's always important to get more critical tiers out of it. This can get me into wars. I think it's oranges. I don't know if I actually see reds with my exact setup, but I believe it's just big criticals, which would be similar to essentially what Enervate is doing, but I can get really close towards essentially that 200%-ish range. I don't know, I have to go and do the math, or maybe I've done the math on the screen for you. I don't know, maybe I did. From there onwards, what I have in here is I have this ribbon. Now, the ribbon, if you don't have it, basically just put Toxin in. Just put Toxin in, okay? So a 60-60 Toxin mod, 60-60 cold mod. It'll basically go and give you viral. Then I go ahead and run heat, but I want heat to be the highest because essentially, overall, I just want to go and stack heat as fast as possible. It's not essentially a heat inherit build, but yes, you get the idea. As long as my status weighting means that heat is higher, then that's perfect for me, okay? So in this one here, not only do I go ahead and get Toxin in here, but I also can get extra multi-shot and critical damage. And again, it's a critical build. Now, I don't have any damage mods in here. I don't have Hornet Strike. I don't have Galvanized Shot. So all of my damage is essentially coming from the build up that I get with the heat in here, which is why heat is also status weighted higher. As you can go and see, Cascadia Flare on heat status effect, 12% damage for 10 seconds. It gives you 480% damage. Right, so that is lovely. So this is going to build up really, really quickly. Runious Extension increases the beam length, so I'm going to shoot enemies really far away. I'm promising you, I showed it on my stream earlier as well, but you wasn't there for that. If you just go and put the 60-60 Toxin mod in here, you will still obliterate enemies. It is so effortless using this, and you'll see some gameplay footage a little bit later as well. If I didn't already put the gameplay footage at the beginning, I'm sure I would have anyways. But yes, it is effortless. I absolutely love the Ocucor, and I feel like in Ash's hands with this exact setup, it also goes ahead and gets amplified. But yes, if you want to run an Enervate, you can do, okay? Now, as for like the other things that I can go and do here, my melee choice of weapons, since I'm not really typically using melee weapons here, that's not what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be running and gunning. So I use Praedos. I use it as a stat stick, and I go ahead and get this stat of it. This gives me 30% parkour velocity. Well, remember the augment that I'm using, the Fatal Teleport, also gives me 30% parkour velocity. So I'm actually getting 60% parkour velocity. That means whenever I bullet jump and roll, I'm going for it, which is great because I want to fly through the tile set effortlessly using things like Kuva Bramma, just plinking down on enemies like an AC 130, or I'm using Ocucor where I'm literally just spinning my mouse around the screen and everything's dying. I'm not even being exaggerated. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's absolutely gross. So particle velocity is great for me just to be this absolutely unhinged flying target that enemies can't deal with, don't even know where I am, and just getting deleted, right? So Praedos works really, really well here. Now, as for focus schools, I'm basically just going to go and use the Madarai here. The Madarai is going to be threefold as always. I'm going to be using Sling Strength. Sling Strength basically means whenever I dash into the ground, I go ahead and get 40% ability strength for the next 20 seconds. So this can go ahead and be put on my Subsumable choice, in this case, Rhino's Roar. Whatever your Subsumable choice is, that's entirely up to you. From there onwards, as I've done doing all my dashing and whatnot, whenever I switch back towards my Warframe, I naturally go and get 50% casting speed anyways. This is also just nice, but even if I didn't want that, I also go and get 100% critical damage on my amp anyways. And speaking of amp and speaking of damage, whenever I go and kill particular enemies, whether I go down or I'm about to go and die, because maybe that happens, maybe I was a little bit overzealous, or maybe I didn't pay attention to my my second ability, my smoke screen running out, and something hit me and killed me, or maybe I hit a toxin proc, by all means. The point is, if I need to go and get myself back up, having that extra amp critical damage, having the Void Strike in here as well for the 1000% damage increase whenever I go and use the first ability of Madarai, basically means whenever I'm in Last Grasp, I can go and fight for my life back a lot quicker. So all I gotta go and do is essentially just kill 3 enemies before 15 seconds, and I will get myself back up. Lovely stuff, all right? Between all of that, that's gonna go and help. Phoenix Talons is also just nice anyways, because it's physical and operator, just overall damage, which again, this is a whole damage build, so you can see how like Madarai is essentially just going to fit in so nice here. I did contemplate Vazarin at one point for his Protector Sling, because I was like, oh my god, combat discipline is killing me. Basically just states that allies touch my voice sling are granted immunity and can go ahead and get healed. You don't have to go ahead and do that, but I was like, I'm working way harder than I need to. If you do want to go and run things like Zenurik as well, you can go ahead and do so. And I just realized on Zenurik, you can also go ahead and get ability strength here as well. But you also go and get energy and energy over time with things like Energy Pulse and Hardened Wellspring. So if you want to go and start off here, that's fine until you're ready to move towards Madarai, then sit on Madarai as well, all right? Now, as for the companion of choice over here, once I go invisible, my companion essentially becomes a little bit of a passive, so it doesn't really typically do an awful lot. When my companions don't do an awful lot, I tend to go ahead and go for my worm. Not my worm, that sounds awful. I tend to go ahead and go for Worm Prime. So Worm Prime, and the reason why I'm going for it is because multiple reasons here. Calculated redirection. Why? Because I'm going to go and use Reinforced Bond. This basically just means if the companion exceeds over 1,200 max shields or over shields, then you go ahead and increase your fire rate by 60%. As you can imagine, it's a run and gun build. Free fire rate on primaries and secondaries, I'm absolutely gonna want. Why would I not want that? That is absolutely free. 60% fire rate, that's a lethal torrent right there, right? So this is absolutely fantastic to go and chuck on your builds, increasing your DPS value, why not? Chuck both of those on, and you can see my shield is over 1,200. From there onwards, Tenacious Bonds, because what you'll go notice that it says if the companion's critical chance is over 50%, then you gain 1.2 times final critical damage multiplier. Now, what did I say about Arcane Crepuscular? Arcane Crepuscular gives me 3 times final critical multiplier, which is 300%. This gives me 1.2 times, which is 120%. I have 4.2 times final critical multiplier, or in this case 420% Lamau over there. So I do need to go and make sure that my weapon at least has over 50% critical chance. Ideally, Creeping Bullseye or Point Strike or anything else like that, just go ahead and whack something like that in, but that's the only thing that I'm looking for it to do. My companion isn't attacking or anything else like that. This is buff, this is a buff, all right? Speaking of buffs as well, the other things that I can go and do is have things like Guardian. If my shields deplete, this will go ahead and give me shields back instantly, but then it goes on the cooldown for like 20-30 seconds. And then things like Shield Charger also increases my maximum shield and also my shield regeneration as well. Again, lots of just like passive buffs that's basically going on here. And speaking of passive buffs, we've also got Negate. Sentinel prevents status effects from applying to its owner once every 5 seconds. Not too bad. Now, this also means that I don't typically need that prime sure-footed that I was talking about earlier, so the power drift there would also be kind of nice. But anyways, this is more for like maybe a toxin proc or something else like that, you know, or a magnetic proc, whatever. Getting that little bit of protection is also kind of nice. Now, if I do go and use Manifold Bonds, killing enemies with 3 or more unique status effects reduces companion ability cooldowns by 3 seconds. Ability cooldowns are basically precepts. In this case, this mod here, or this icon here, is a precept. So this has a cooldown, 5 seconds. This has a cooldown. This has a cooldown. You get the idea? Basically, as long as I kill enemies with 3 or more status effects, which is basically what I'm doing with majority of my weapons that I'm using anyways, then I can also go and reset the cooldowns of these, which means my pass cycle and protect me a lot better. Now, just for the other ones, Prime Animal Instinct, loot an enemy radar. That's always nice to go ahead and have whilst I'm running the gun in. Prime Regen, if this thing dies, I can go ahead and get it back a little bit quicker because it saves 35 seconds. And then also Vacuum, because why would I not want to go and get my loot back? So as you can see, nice, everything kind of comes together there. I leave it as a bit of a background type thing, and then that goes ahead and helps me out. Now, as for my Archon Shards down here, I won't lie to you, ideally you can flex this around a little bit more as you will please, so I'll go and put some alternatives on the screen in a moment. But what I've gone for is maximum energy filled on spawn. This is just going to be nice. It just allows me to go ahead and essentially cast my 2nd ability and then my 4th ability, so my Subsumable. So with this in here, I could basically start running and gunning right off the rip. Any mission I enter, I can press 2, I can press 4, and now I can just go start killing things, all right? Which is fantastic. So this is a pretty good shard to synergize the start of my mission. From there onwards, I'm actually using 1 Violet Archon Shard. This basically means whenever I go and kill things like Eximus units, which whenever you go and kill them, they go and drop 2 health orbs and 1 energy orb. Whenever I go ahead and pick up the energy orb, I get a little bit of health. Whenever I go and pick up the health orbs, I get a little bit of energy. It's a nice little thing to go and have in the background whilst I'm also just killing lots of Eximus units and so forth, which can also go and just help my energy return. So looking for Eximus units is like a high priority if I'm looking for energy, all right? So, oh, I'm running out of energy right now. I want to go and cast an ability. Where's the next unit? Kill that bad boy, get the energy orb from them, go ahead and get the health orbs, convert the health orbs to energy as well. Lovely stuff. Now from there onwards, I'm basically running 3 crimsons for ability duration. Should be a little bit self-explanatory when I'm going to be using 2 of my main abilities are going to be timers, the smokescreen and the Subsumable. You can go ahead and bump those up for quality of life on your timers. As for some of the other shards you can go and have up here, it's entirely up to you. You can have things like the Topaz Criticals if you wanted to, but again, Enervate exists. Or you can have things like emeralds. You can have like the corrosive stacks where you can go and armor strip. So if you're looking for a little bit more longevity for your builds and removing enemy defenses whilst you're kind of running the gun in and having armor strip whilst you're running the gun in, then yeah, some emerald shards can also be nice as well. But yeah, those are the other ones you can go and do, parkour velocity, so forth. That's all going to come together pretty nicely. Now, all I need to go and do is just put some gameplay up on the screen, right? Stop yapping, let's go and get straight into it. So the build is as simple as follows. Number 1, you enter the mission, you've got enough to go and cast your 2nd and 4th ability, all right? So what I'm going to go and do is exactly that rotation. Go ahead and apply your stealth. You are now protected, all right? Enemies don't really know where they are, but they can hear you. So when you're shooting, they will be somewhat relatively aware of where the noise is coming from, but they won't be able to see exactly where you are yourself, all right? If you do want to go and use silence mods on your guns to really confuse them so now they can't hear, they're blind, deaf and dumb, that's perfect. You can go ahead and do that. That would only help your survivability a little bit more often. Otherwise, once you're inside your stealth, as you can go imagine, if you're running primary weapons, you're getting Spectral Serration. That's 330% damage, so that mod works out really well for primaries. But your Smoke Shadow Augment has now applied. That's 150% critical chance. Your Arcane Crepuscular has applied. That's 30% ability strength and a 3 times final critical damage multiplier, which is also nice as well. And then once you've got all of that stuff, lovely, you're protected and you've also got buffed. Now go and cast your Subsumable. Again, your Subsumable choice is entirely up to you. For me, I've gone with the Rhino Roar to go and help my faction damage, which is nice and multiplicative. And again, if I do want to go ahead and run any dot on top of critical and so forth, I can do, you know, and then that just basically applies itself twice. Like it's the power 2 basically, because it applies to the dot as much as it applies to the on here. So it's as simple as that. Now, if I want to go and use Fatal Teleport, if I want to go and use Fatal Teleport, not only do I go ahead and get some of my duration back on my Smoke Shadow, which is great, but I will also go and get that parkour velocity as well, which will allow me to go and run through the tile set, run the gun in a lot easier, which is also nice. Now, I don't really use the first ability whatsoever, but again, the first ability also has an augment. If you do want to go ahead and run it to go ahead and armor strip, you can go ahead and consider that, all right? The Seeking Shuriken can also go and remove enemies' armor, but it's temporary removement, but you can go ahead and fully armor strip them. So if you want to consider it, consider it. But yeah, the build is just basically really simple, really easy to go and flow. If you're looking for someone to go ahead and survive on whilst doing a lot of damage, whilst keeping it critical, then Ashe is going to be your guy right there as well. Do consider as well his passive also is, I'll go and bring you guys back right now, but do go and consider that his passive as well, also any kind of slash inflictions deal 25% more damage and last 50% more longer. So Ashe also works pretty well with Dot, which again, as you could imagine when I was talking about Dot, also works really well with Raw overall. All right. If you're, God forbid, you've lasted this long inside a video, if there are some other weapons that you want to go and look towards, I will just leave them up here on the screen. But some other ones that I did go and try: Kuva Tonka I liked, Tenet Glaxion, Torrid Incarnon, Shedu for secondaries, Spore Lacer, Dual Toxis, Dual Coda Toxis. The reason why I would say that I wouldn't lean towards them is because I find them a little bit more disruptive, but they're also just really nice. Tenet Glaxion I preferred over Torrid Incarnon, for example, because you have to rebuild your Incarnon and it slows you down, but don't feel like you can't run these weapons. They work really, really well. All right, they work super well. Anyways, enough yapping, Clark. I'm sure people just want to go ahead and play the build. So thank you so much for watching today's video. I do appreciate you guys being here. If you did like it, please go and leave a like on the video. It really does go and help the algorithm for more people to go ahead and find a video. Speaking of finding the video, if you do have any friends, I don't, but if you guys do, please consider sharing the video with a friend if you think they would enjoy a build like this. And as always, if you guys are new to the channel today, consider hitting that subscribe button. It'd be great for you guys to go ahead and come back. But as always, I'll catch you guys again inside the next video. Take care, everybody. Bye guys. Bye-bye.